Hi, welcome back. In our last session, we learned about search referencing and how to integrate with Google Analytics. Today, we are going to see one of the most probably interesting features of Calligraphy. I personally like it a lot because I love building e-commerce applications, and Calligraphy does it in an absolutely seamless way. Okay, today we are going to learn how to accept credit card payments, but not only credit card payments. We are also going to learn how we can accept cryptocurrency in any e-commerce application that you wanna create. Now, of course, throughout this course, we built a mini portfolio showcase application. Okay, an e-commerce transactional system and a gateway for payment doesn't really apply in that world, but we are still going to see it from a backend and from a coding perspective. So today we're going to learn several things. One of the things that we probably mentioned before is when we look at the file structure of Calligraphy, there is a folder called tests. Okay, that folder can allow you to create any sort of controllers or models. So anything that is contained within this folder acts as if you have it under the application folder. Okay, and what we're going to do today is we are going to learn how we could create a charge using a certain gateway, which I will talk about in a while, in code by creating a test controller. Okay, so we're gonna do that. And the second part, we're gonna learn how to do exactly the same thing, but we're gonna accept cryptocurrency instead of accepting regular credit cards. All right, so let's dig into it. The lecture that we're concerned with today is the lecture on payments using credit cards and cryptocurrency, and this reference does really exhaustively explain how we could do it very quickly using Calligraphy. Now, of course, Calligraphy does use third-party gateways. What we call a gateway is really a payment processing application, if we may call it this way, in order to do this. So for credit cards, Calligraphy partners with Stripe, Stripe, so you can go to stripe.com. It's free. You can create an account for free and set it up, and I will show you how the whole application looks like. Okay, so we are going to be using Stripe in order to process credit cards. On the cryptocurrency side, we are going to be using Coinbase Commerce, which is a gateway for processing payments that is developed by Coinbase themselves. So if you are familiar with cryptocurrency, especially in the US, you definitely know about Coinbase. So Coinbase Commerce is really the gateway for cryptocurrency payments. And of course, I will also show you once you open an account, you also need to open an account with Coinbase, and it's free as well. I will show you how the dashboard would look like. Now, let's first focus our effort on Stripe. What happens when you create an account with Stripe? You get to a dashboard that looks a little bit like this. Okay, now Stripe offers you two environments to play with. You have a sandbox environment, which is really all test data, and then you have the production environment, which is your real production. Right now I am in the test data. Okay, if you look at, I am in the home page, but I am looking at my development environment, and you usually see it's test data. And if you look at the left side, there is a toggle that says you are currently viewing the test data. So everything that I'm going to be navigating around in here is test data. So I'm not worried about any proprietary information or anything like this. Okay, and I strongly advise that you also work in the test data. Okay, not to work with real credit cards when you're testing on your local environment. And luckily, Stripe does provide you with a test credit card to test with, and we will use it in order to validate whether our payment process worked or not. Great. Now let's go back to the lecture again and go to the code. Now, the last time where we left off, if you remember well, we were working on Google Analytics and the referencing, and I mentioned that app env needs to be set to production in order for analytics to work. Okay, so for this exercise, we have to go back to the local development environment. Okay, otherwise we're gonna have some errors with the Stripe. And I will explain this in a while. So I made sure that anything that is related to Google Analytics, we got rid of it, because we are not in a production environment, and we should not be in a production environment when we're testing payments. All right. So I set this back to local. I removed Google Analytics, and then if you go back to the project controller that's over here, I got rid of the Google Analytics element as well. Okay. So now we're going to put our application folder away, because we're going to be dealing with the test folder right now. And we're going to create a new folder. We're going to call it payment controller.php. Actually, by mistake, I created a folder, so I'm going to remove that one. I'm going to delete it. And we're going to say it's a new file. We're going to call it payment controller.php. And similarly to what we used to do in the application folder, we are going to do exactly the same thing here. So this is a payment controller, and it extends controller. Okay, never forget to set the namespace. I know some people might have a tendency to forget that. I do in most situations. All right, so now that I have a controller, we're going to create a function in there that we're going to say, let's say we charge credit, okay, just to indicate that it's a credit card charge. Great. Now let's go back to the documentation, and before the documentation we have some configuration to do in order to link our application with Stripe. So this is where we're going to start. Let's go to the documentation, and the documentation talks about changing these keys that are provided by Stripe. Okay, and if we look at these are in the .m file. So let's go to the .m file, and this is where the keys are. Now, Stripe provides you with two pairs of keys. Okay, there is one pair for the production environment, and there is another pair for the testing environment. What these pairs are, there is one public key and one secret key. Okay, the secret key needs to be kept for yourself. Okay, you can put it in the .m file, but it needs to be a secret key. Nobody would know about this. The public key is the one that that you could put and that you could publicize and even put in your code, but not the secret key. So we have a set of public key and secret key for our production environment, and then we have a public key and a secret key for our test environment. So right now I am in the test environment. If you go to developers in that menu and you hit API keys, you will see you have something called publishable key and something called secret key. You need them both. So I'm going to copy this one and I'm going to put it over here, and it's under pay public key test. So that's my first. I'm going to go reveal my second over here, and that's okay if I reveal it. It's a test key. And then go back here and say, this is my private key for testing. We are not going to fill the public and private keys for the production. Okay, we are going to leave these the way they are. Anyways, the code, since AppEnv is set to local, it is only going to use the test keys. From the moment you set this to production, then it's going to take into account these two keys. So right now we don't have to worry about any of this. We are in local and it's going to read the test keys. Great. Second step. Now that we have this, now we can start writing the code. One thing that you need to know is that the credit card test is 424242 repeated 4 times. Okay, it's a 16-digit card. And then for the expiry year, you can use any year in the future. Expiry month, any month in the future. And CVS, you could use any 3 or 4 numbers. Okay, so what matters for the testing data is really the credit card number. Great. Now, how do we create a payment? First and foremost, when you are in the controller, okay, you will need to activate payment. There is a function called activate payment that you always need to run. This will activate Stripe and will initiate the Stripe object in order for you to start communicating with it. This activation needs to happen at the moment that you are processing the credit card, okay? Not before, not on any page. So it's not something that you should put in some global page that each and every one of your pages would inherit. Not at all. It should only be activated from the moment you want to start processing the credit card. Great. That's our first step in code. Our second step in code, and this we can immediately copy the whole thing from here, you would need to get the inputs of the credit card. Okay? How do you get the input? If you have a form, it's exactly the same way as any other form that we created before. Now, in this particular case, we obviously do not have a form necessarily. Okay, so we are gonna fake that information, and the way to fake it will add some values as we go. So we do not have any of that right now, and I will put it like this, or we could add it. No, I don't want to. Yeah, we'll fake that information. So we will completely change all these values here, like that, like that, and then like that. In an ideal world, remember, you are getting these values from the form. But now we are hard coding the value because we are testing. Great. What is our next step? Our next step now is really to create a charge. Now that I have my card, ideally taken from the user, and my immediate next step is really to create a payment. Now, what is the syntax for it? It says the controller, once that you activate the payment, now has an integrated object within it called payment, okay, that you can call by doing $this arrow payment. And now that payment controller, or that payment object, has a method called create, and that create transaction, and that create transaction, it takes an amount value, it takes the currency, and then it takes the card that was inputted by the user. Now it does take other variables as well. If you really want to dig deeper into it, it takes a receipt email. All right, and the receipt email is really the email of the customer. If you wanna if you want Stripe to send a confirmation email on your behalf, and I can show you how Stripe does it. So there is a setting in here for Stripe. If you go to settings to set up an email to be sent under the business settings. And over here, there's something called email receipts, and Stripe can immediately send a confirmation for you once for the customer once the transaction passed. So if you want to make use of that email and you don't want to do the emails yourself, then in that case, you can enter the customer's email in here, which you can take directly from the information that you have about the customer, and then Stripe would send an email automatically for them. Okay, then you can add any additional metadata about the customer. This is really nothing more but a JSON that contains some information about the user. This you may or not want to use it, but if any additional information that you want about your customer, you can add it to the metadata, and then it would be saved in the Stripe dashboard for you to have access to. The description is the description of the transaction itself, so you could add anything that describe the transaction. All right, so this is really how the create transaction works. Now if I go back here, for the purpose of this course, we're only going to add a value. Let's put $10, not $1,000. Well, actually it is $10. This value is in cents, so keep that in mind. Don't get confused that 1,000 is not $1,000. It's a $10. It's a value in cent. Then you would put the currency, and then you send the object or the array that we created about the card and you put it, you send it as a parameter for the create transaction. Okay, and now we're gonna do this. We're gonna run this code, and you're gonna see we're gonna charge $10 to our account, and that's everything that you need to worry about, believe it or not. Okay, so now just like anything else, we created a controller, but we do need to create a route, and that route we're gonna put it somewhere over here, and we're gonna say route get. Of course, in an ideal world, it would be a post and things like that. But just for the sake of the exercise, we're going to say pay credit. Okay, pay credit. And then what are we going to call? What is the name of our class? It's called payment controller. And what is the name of the method? It's called charge credit. Like that. Okay, now let me dump this value so that we see what the output is. So I'm going to do dump. And let's go take a look. So I am in Calligraphy Showcase, and we said pay credit. Of course, we always have errors. On line 30, we have an extra one. Did we forget to close something? Nope, that seems about right. Here we go. Action success. False, could not find payment information, and that is correct because we did not enter any credit card information over here. Okay, so that means already that at least we are connected to the Stripe object. Now let's enter our values: 4242, 4242, 4242, which is our credit card test, our test credit card. The expiry month, we're gonna put any month, it doesn't matter. Let's put August or 8, just 8 like that, and then expiry year, let's put the date in the future. And then 1, 2, 3, 4 for the CVC. It could be any 3 or 4 digits, okay? And now let's go and try it again. Now it's true. So now the payment just passed, by the way, and we got a confirmation. So if you want to print back the confirmation for your customer on the page, then you would get this value very easily, and you can get this confirmation code for them to reuse later on. Now let me take you to Stripe in order for you to see. So let's go back to home, and now you're going to see a charge on the home. Whoop, here we go. This is my charge, and it's a $10 charge. This is what happened right now. Okay, if I go to payment, you see it more in a literal format, and this is my latest charge of $10. This is the description, which happens to be the code. So if I go back here and I compare, not to this one, but rather to this one. It's 1E1 something. So let's go here, 1E1, 1EI, O, and so on and so forth. And it just happened, which is 7:31 p.m. All right? And you just made a payment, and the credit card just passed, believe it or not. Okay, so for me, I personally love this feature. I use it a lot. I use it in every e-commerce application that I create with Caligraphy. Great, that was Stripe. Now let's go try something with cryptocurrency. Cryptocurrency works a little differently than credit cards, okay? The way you're going to check out, or you're going to allow your customers to pay for the product, what you need to do is you need to add a method, not a method in a code mentality, but rather you need to give them a way to send their money to the address that you give them. Okay, this is how cryptocurrency works. Of course, you need, when you open an account with Coinbase Commerce, it's gonna assign temporary addresses for you for your account, and these addresses are public in a sense that anybody can deposit money to that address. Okay, so it's a deposit number that it will create for you. And really, the payment process is about giving that number to the user, and giving them a certain window of time to transfer the money to that account. If they do, then the processing works. If they don't, then the buy will not happen and the transaction will not occur. Now, luckily, Coinbase has a fantastic way of dealing with this, and it does give you code and UI out of the box that you could use. And I strongly advise you to use the out of the box UI. And in fact, Calligraphy does integrate that UI for you, and I will show it to you right now. So, how do we create a payment with Coinbase? Of course, you open an account with Coinbase. Coinbase looks like this. This is the dashboard after you create the account. If you go to the settings, okay, you scroll down a little bit, there is a section called API keys. You can create as many API keys in the case of Coinbase Commerce as you want. I'm going to create one, which will be a temporary one. I will delete because it's a test, and I don't want you to copy this and use it unless you want to send me money. So I will delete it at the end of the lecture, and I'm going to copy this. Why am I copying it? Because our .env and Calligraphy also needs it. Calligraphy has a .env element called CryptoPay key. If you want to use CryptoPay, then you would need to give that key. Now I added the key to the .env. Okay? Now let's go to the documentation. That was the first step to do. Second step to do now is to activate the Coinbase Commerce. Notice that it's exactly the same steps over and over again in the payment. So we need to activate, then we need to create a transaction or to create a charge. And this is exactly how it's going to work. So I'm going to copy that code over here. We're going to create another function unless it's already created. Nope. So let's do public function, and we're going to do charge crypto like that. And I'm going to paste that code. Okay, first you activate, done. Second, create a payment transaction. The payment transaction is a bit long, and there's more that could be added to it. Of course, it takes the value in dollars, not in cents. Okay, and then the currency, very similar to what we did with the Stripe, and then it's going to take a bunch of other attributes that are all grouped in a collection or in an array. What are these attributes? It does need to take a name and a description. These name and description are going to appear on the UI that Coinbase is going to give us. Okay, so usually that name is the product name. Let's call it our course test product. Description of the product, this is the product test that we created in the course. Okay, great. Now this is all we need. This is really the basic information that you could send to the transaction. There are many others though, so let me go back. Is it described somewhere? Yes, over here. Create transaction. Takes the amount, a currency, takes the charge, all right, which you don't need to specify. It could take metadata, which is an array. Let me see if I put the charge here. That's the charge. The charge is the array, okay? That takes product name and a description, so we have that. So the charge is an array. Then you can add metadata. The set of metadata that you add is other than what the charge is, okay? So this is also an array. Metadata is any extra information that you want to add to the transaction itself. It could be any set of key value pairs that you define okay? And then you can set a redirect URL in the case of success and a cancellation URL in the case the user cancels. Okay, the redirection URL will happen only if you received the payment. So if your address received the payment. If the address did not receive the payment, then you will never be redirected to this URL. Okay, and there is a time window for the user to transfer the money. If the money is not transferred during that time, then the transaction, not the transaction, this transaction is canceled, and then they would need to either refresh the page or go back and do it. Great. Now let's go back over here. So create transaction. We have all of our elements. Now what it's doing next is it's going to return a view. Why are we returning a view? Because what this is going to generate, it's going to generate a URL, and that URL is going to be called from your page whenever the user hits or clicks on a button. So how does this whole thing works? We need the page to host that button for us, okay? Especially in a test environment. So let's use the page that is given by default by Caligraphy. So I'm gonna say default/index. That would give us, you know, the very original page that we saw. So let's use it again. And what this statement is going to do, it's gonna put a button for us on that page that is called, you know, pay or what have you. And then we'll see what that button is going to do. So let's go check it out. But before we do this, what do we need? Yes, you got it. We need a route. So route get. This time we're gonna say pay crypto, which is gonna be payment controller at charge crypto. Now let's go test it out. Pay crypto. We might need to, 1 second, yes, we might need to do something over here. Don't forget, we are in payment controller. We are using this, but it doesn't know it. So what we need to do is we need to use Caligraphy / crypto payment. Okay, if you don't do this, it doesn't recognize what crypto payment is, so don't forget that. Let's make sure that the documentation has it. If the documentation, yes, it does. I just did not pay attention. So please remember, crypto payment, you need to set the namespace for it. So now let's go back here, refresh. Something is happening. That's good. That's a good sign. Can we see a button? No. Why is that? Because there is another step to be taken. And what we need to do to add this button, so now we have the view and we are sending the URL to the view, but now we need the button in here. So what we need to do is we need to include this into the page that we're creating. Okay, so we're going to copy that. And in any view that we create, which in our case happens to be index, the default index, let me make sure we are in the default index. Over here, you could have added it, by the way, to the project list if you want to. And then we are going to go to index. And what I am going to add here, anywhere really, I'll put it out here, is include. There's a module called crypto payment in the default theme. That crypto payment is our button. If we go take a look at it, notice, okay, it's nothing more but a button. Now in this case we called it pay with crypto. You can call it whatever you want. All right, and now let's go back to index, and from index we gotta go back one, go to modules, and go to crypto payment. Actually, we don't have to go back one because it's in the root. So we call modules crypto payment. Now let's see if we see our button. Hello, it is there. And now notice what is happening. So all the code that we created, what it did, and especially what we did in the payment controller, I will open it again, is we created this transaction. And this transaction is going to generate a URL, and that URL is what the button is going to do. So I'm going to hit it. Notice that's the URL. This is our course test product along with the text that we entered. This is the value that we entered. That UI is provided to you by Coinbase Commerce. The charge is already created. It is in a status pending or in a status, what have you. We will see this in a while. And then at some point, the status of this transaction is going to change. So let's say I want to pay using Bitcoin. I will definitely not pay right now, but let's say we want to do it. Notice there is a timing. That timing is an hour. So it's going to wait 1 hour for the user to send the money. And once the money is sent, and that is the amount in Bitcoin, by the way, so you don't have to worry about any of that. Once the amount is set, it is going to redirect to the URL that we specified in our method over here. Now, right now we didn't specify anything, so ideally it's going to take us to by default it's going to take us to the page that called it. But this is not what you want to do in real life. In real life, you definitely want to take them to a page that says, it succeeded and thank you for your message for your purchase, okay, and probably give them a confirmation code. And for as long as we're here, it's still waiting for the user to pay. At any time, we could go back and hit the back button, and this transaction will be canceled. All right, now there are other methods. Let's go and explore these other methods. So we saw create transaction at any point in time. So every transaction has an ID. Okay, now I lost the ID, but if I were to go back, I don't know if it's still there. No, that we made another purchase with the other one. Okay, so we lost it, but we'll get it again in a different way. Let me go back to the lecture. So if you know the ID of the transaction, you can cancel it by using the cancel transaction function. You can get all the charges or all the transactions by using this method over here. So let's go and give it a shot. Here's what I'm gonna do. Yes, I do return a view. So now maybe what we could do, I'm gonna create another function over here and call it a get charges like that. And now what we are going to do is we have to do this again. Dot crypto equal new crypto payment. Then we're going to do dot crypto get charges like that. We're going to dump that. Here we go. Now we are going to create in our web another route. We're going to call it get charges. It's also going to go to payment controller at get charges. Hopefully I did this right. Let's go here. I'm going to do get charges. Is that how we call the method? Let's check that again. I forgot the slash. Is it capital? It's not capital. I apologize. It's not about the slash, by the way. Slash should not make a difference. It should be not capital. All right. Those are all the charges that occurred on this account. Okay. Now, ideally, our charge, the last one we did, happened over here. And if you go to look at the different values in it, this is really the code that was given to us. Okay. And that code is really the ID. You could use either this ID or the code. Both of them would work. Okay. We did not specify a URL, and then let me make sure. Yeah, this is the URL that we used, or that was used. This is, in our case, nope, this is not our charge. our course test. All right, so it puts it on top of all charges. So this is the one we just created, and this is really the code that I am gonna copy because we're gonna use it in our code later on, not necessarily in the code, but at least in the parameters. Okay, so now we're gonna do again we're gonna try another function from here. What we're gonna do is we're gonna check get charge status, and there's a very particular reason why I wanna talk about this one right now. So let's go back to the code. Let's go to the controller, and let's create a function that is called get status. Okay, and we're gonna do the same thing. Crypto new crypto payment, and then crypto get status charge status, and then it is going to take an ID, well, an ID, the charge ID. So let's call it $ID for the time being. Okay, now I need to go get the $ID. So our $ID is coming from our request, and I'm gonna say fetch ID, and I'm gonna dump the status. Here we go. Okay, all right, now let's create a route for that. We gotta be a little careful when you create these routes. So we're gonna say crypto, or let's say charge, crypto charge, slash ID slash status, like that. And I'm gonna say payment controller. And by the way, it could be any set of slashes. I just don't want it to conflict with what we had here. So I needed to add something, but you could call it whatever you want. I just called it crypto charge, and then ID, and then status, and then payment controller would be at get charge. Status is, I think it's get status that we called it, and semicolon at the end. So payment controller, yes, it's get status. Okay. All right, let's see what this one gives us. And what I need to give it, I hope I did not lose my value, but just in case I did, I'm going to copy this code again. And we are going to go to crypto. Is that what it was? I already forgot. Crypto charge. Crypto charge slash this slash status. Look at it. It's giving you the latest status of this transaction. In this particular case, it's still new. New means it has not been processed or anything like that. After the 1 hour, it will be set to canceled. Okay, so it will go away. But right now, it's still new. It's still pending kind of thing. And then it goes through several layers, or through several statuses. What you care about is either the completed payment. Okay. In order to check all the statuses, you would need to go to the Coinbase documentation that you can find in the somewhere in the Coinbase application, or if you search on Google, you will find it. Okay, and you will get the different statuses for the API. Now, why am I telling you that this is interesting to have? Because ideally, you always on whether the success page, or even if you later on for as long as the user is connected, you need to check whether the transaction was completed in order to give them the product that they bought. Okay, so it's always good to double check, even if you the redirect URL might have already made that check for you on the page itself. Always make sure to validate that the transaction was completed before you commit to sending the product to the customer. And this is really everything. You just got it all. Okay, so what did we do today? We created a payment controller under our tests, and we saw how we could create even controllers in that test folder. We created a one method or one controller method to charge a credit card using Stripe, and we created another one to charge cryptocurrency with Coinbase Commerce. And then we explored some of the functionalities that come with Coinbase Commerce. Based on today, you are able to create any e-commerce application using Calligraphy. Okay, you don't need more than this. All you need is the right accounts with the right gateways, and of course to apply this code that we just played with. With that, this is where our session ends today. I wish you a fantastic day, and then hopefully our next lecture is probably the last one where we're going to talk about features, and it's going to be an important one. We're going to be talking about APIs. And then in our last lecture, we are gonna wrap up, and I'm gonna probably show you some more security features or some more security tricks in the very last lecture. With that, have a great day, and I look forward to seeing you next time.